From Washington, D.C. studios, this is the best of Muslim news on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum, I'm Hena Zuberi. On behalf of Muslim Network TV, I wish you a very happy Eid al-Adha. Let's watch the best of our news reports.
Made for love, now used for hate. This is Taj Mahal today. A symbol of love by a Muslim king of India is now being used for hatred against Muslims.
Jai Sri Ram! Jai Sri Ram!
It is a masterpiece made by 20,000 artisans. It is a priceless monument of love for one's wife. It attracts more than 7 million visitors a year. In 2007, it was declared a winner of the new 7 Wonders of the World initiative. UNESCO, while designating it as a World Heritage Site in 1983, called it the jewel of Muslim art in India and one of the most universally admired masterpieces of the world's heritage. But now the far-right Hindu extremists are targeting it. The ruling BJP party's Vinay Katiyar in 2017 claimed that the 17th century monument was built by destroying a Hindu temple called Tejo Mahal, and it housed a Shiva Linga. Linga means penis, which is worshipped in India. BJP RSS activists and militias have destroyed the 500-year-old Babri Mosque, claiming it was the birthplace of another Hindu god Rama. Now they are attacking another mosque, calling it a birthplace of Krishna. But that is not enough. Extremists among the Hindutva militancy even call the Kaaba, the holy site of Mecca, to be a Hindu temple. They say Hajar al-Aswad, which Muslims kiss, was linga or penis of Hindu god Shiva, and tawaf is a Hindu practice. May God save us from the extremists. Just Google it to learn more. This is Salaha Farouk reporting from the Toronto studios for Muslim Network TV.
Men, young or old, all run between these 2 hills. One is Safa, the other is Marwa. Why do Muslim men here run? They run in memory of a woman. Her name is Hajira, as Muslims call it, or Hagar in English, peace be upon her. She was looking for water as her baby Ismail was crying close by, peace be upon him. Whenever Hajira was in a valley between the hill, she could not see Ismail, so she ran to be able to see her baby while searching for water. All Muslim men who visit Mecca for Hajj run where Hajira ran. Hajj, or in English, the pilgrimage to Mecca, is the 5th pillar of Islam. Each Muslim is expected to make the journey at least once in a lifetime. This is if they are physically and financially able to do so. Running between these 2 hills is a part of Hajj. Hajj is about Prophet Ibrahim, as Muslims remember him, or Abraham. To remember and commemorate his struggle and that of Hajira and Ismail. While Hajira was desperately looking for water and running, God Almighty caused a spring to appear. It is called Zamzam. Not only did the family of Ismail drink from it, for the last 1400 years, Zamzam has been feeding all the Hajjis. So when Muslim men are done running 7 times between those 2 hills, they come down and drink the Zamzam water. And then they pray where Prophet Ibrahim prayed, all just next to the Kaaba in Mecca.
This is perhaps the only one street in the world where two Nobel Peace Prize laureates had lived. This is Soweto, South Africa. Nelson Mandela and Archbishop Desmond Tutu both lived here. Here is Loreto, their neighbor.
He used to literally do his morning run here. So to hear of his passing this morning, it's just a big blow. As you know, that this street is the only street where in the world the two Nobel Peace Prize winners have lived. You can then imagine us, the neighbors around. We are really touched by his passing.
Both are no longer in this world, but both, Nelson Mandela and Archbishop Tutu, stay in the hearts of Muslims. Muslims were a part of the struggle against apartheid in South Africa. Archbishop Tutu knew what apartheid is. Israeli human rights organization B'Tselem and Human Rights Watch now call Israel an apartheid state. But the Nobel Peace Prize laureate Bishop Tutu compared Israel's treatment of Palestinians to apartheid. He even backed boycott and sanctions movements against Israel. He considered Palestine as God's own cause.
People of Palestine for freedom from humiliation, from persecution, from the unjust policies of Israel. That is something that is unstoppable because it is a righteous cause. It is a righteous cause. It is God's own cause.
He was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for his work in 1984. As the apartheid system fell in 1994, Tutu led the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. He sought to provide restorative justice. It meant compensation to survivors and amnesty to perpetrators who cooperated with the inquiry. Tutu became the voice of the oppressed. He spoke up for Rohingya people in Burma. When the Burma Task Force launched its campaign for Rohingya people, he came forward. At the request of Maung Zani and Imam Malik Mujahid, he said what Rohingyas face in Burma is a textbook case of genocide. It was years before the rest of the world started considering it a genocide. In 2015, Muslims faced genocide in the Central African Republic. Almost all of the 436 mosques in that country were destroyed. Christian militias were killing Muslims. The world remained silent, but Archbishop Tutu warned them of genocide. He was the only one to use the term genocide to define what was happening. Tutu opposed the invasion of Iraq. He called for former US President George W. Bush and former UK Prime Minister Tony Blair to face prosecution at the International Criminal Court over their invasion and occupation of Iraq. He cared for all.
His legacy will be his love for all people. I don't know whether have you come across his writings. He has always said that God is not God of Christians. God is God of all people. So his main legacy is his love for all God's people.
He chose the cheapest available coffin. as he opposed lavish spending. Thank you, Bishop Tutu. Thank you. This is Salha Farouk for Muslim News.
Zamzam water sprang thousands of years ago when Prophet Ismail, the son of Prophet Ibrahim, and his mother Hajar were in the desert, thirsty and crying. It is located within the Masjid al-Haram in Mecca, just 20 meters away from the Kaaba. Millions of pilgrims visiting Mecca performing Hajj or Umrah drink Zamzam water. Normally, a well has a life cycle which is between 70 to 100 years old. However, Zamzam has been producing water for thousands of years. The Zamzam well is about 30.5 meters deep, with a diameter ranging from 1.08 to 2.66 meters. The well is now located on the ground floor surrounded by glass plates, permitting a clear vision of the inside. The water pumps distribute it throughout the mosque. One of the miracles of Zamzam water is its ability to satisfy both thirst and hunger. Scientists found that certain peculiarities make the water healthier, for example, a higher level of calcium. Pilgrims to Mecca collect Zamzam water in bottles to take it back for relatives and friends back home.
Coming up next after the break is the best of our Muslim news in-depth analysis. So stay tuned and we'll be right back after these messages.
Sound Vision has a summer plan for your kids. Keep them busy and having fun. With creative teaching methods, songs, stories, art projects, and more. Amazing teachers and role models. Lessons that build love for Allah. Positive identity as a Muslim. Summer fun has just begun. Learn about animals in the Quran. Arabic vocabulary, beautiful names of Allah, science in the Quran, visit distant Muslim lands, learn fun facts about the country, the people, and how to cook special dishes, all from the safety and convenience of your home. Visit academy.adamsworld.org for more details. Hurry!
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour. If we could find a way to get inside each other's minds. Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes. Well, before you abuse, criticize, and accuse. Walk a mile in my shoes.
There are 16 million children struggling with hunger in America. That's 1 in 5 daughters, sons, neighbors, and classmates who don't know where their next meal is coming from. Yet billions of pounds of good food go to waste every year. It's time we do something about it. Feeding America is a nationwide network of food banks that helps provide meals to millions of kids and families in need. Visit feedingamerica.org to help them feed even more. Together, we can solve hunger. Together, we're feeding America.
Despite the development of a COVID-19 vaccine, millions around the world will not have access. We need a vaccine that's free and available to everyone, everywhere. It's time for a people's vaccine.
Dad, they took over my bedroom. Come on, come on. Okay, Dad. 1, 2, 3. Dad! You saved me. Dad?
Are you okay?
I'm fine, dear.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need at aarp.org/caregiving.
To stop this genocide, we need your help.
And now we'd like to discuss some new information, some new data that we have learned from a very important study about the rates of COVID vaccines among older Americans. These numbers are surprising some experts in the field. To discuss this issue with us, I'm happy to welcome on our guest today, Professor Matthew A. Buam. He is a PhD of UC San Diego, close to my hometown, and he is the Marvin Cowell Professor of Global Communications and Professor of Public Policy at Harvard University's John F. Kennedy School of Government and Department of Government. We're very honored to have him with us. Good afternoon, Professor. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you so much for having us. So let's dive right into it. So what is this new data that has been released to the public regarding the rates of vaccinations among older Americans? What is this new data? What have we learned from it?
So over the past several years, we've been receiving data about how many people are vaccinated from the government, from the CDC, which is based on data that the states provide to them based on what hospitals tell them. And that's been treated by everyone, researchers, clinicians, policymakers, et cetera, as sort of the ground truth, the state of vaccination. What we've learned is that there are some significant limitations in this data. So this did not seem especially egregious, and it didn't seem especially apparent until we focus in on a group that is particularly highly vaccinated, and I'll explain why that's the case. And in this particular report we're talking about is elderly Americans, who are the most highly vaccinated group of Americans. And the reason this became apparent when we focus in on them is because they are so highly vaccinated, the type of miscounting that's taking place causes the estimates to exceed 100%. So the reason this happens is because the CDC has difficulty distinguishing between people who are getting their original first or second shots from people that are getting third or fourth doses as boosters. So we don't know, we don't have good enough data to isolate at the individual level whether this shot represents a first shot or a third or fourth shot. And so it might be attributed to two different people when in fact it's the same person. And so you end up having CDC data that if you actually just do the raw math exceeds 100%. In other words, more elderly Americans having been vaccinated than there are elderly Americans in the country or in a particular state. Because this is actually, I should say, this is really a state level phenomenon. And when we dug a little bit deeper, we found that for much of the pandemic, the CDC was just arbitrarily maxing out the estimated percentage of vaccinations at 99%. Once we started seeing numbers exceeding 100%, they knocked that down to 95%. This is obviously not based on real estimates of what's happening, but rather an effort to reduce the likelihood of having values exceeding 100%, which isn't necessarily the ideal way to be informing the public about what's going on. And that has some pretty important implications.
Absolutely. So I am a lawyer, not a mathematician, but usually if something is over 100% more than the people actually exist, you've got a problem there. So, all right, so they're aware of the issue now. So let me ask you this. More broadly, do we think the CDC's other data is reliable? Is this kind of a one-off thing, or are there broader problems that we don't know about? Or is this issue now been addressed and we've plugged the hole?
So I think the problem is not with the CDC per se. The problem is that we have a very imperfect, fragmented, and uneven data collection and data centralization process in the US. Because it's a federal system and the individual states are responsible for the protocols for collecting data, and they have different sets of rules for what hospitals report and what they don't report, and those rules can even change over time. It's really difficult to derive sort of complete information and completely consistent information. So it's really beyond the capacity of one federal organization to perfectly assess what the vaccination level is. They do the best they can. They have really good modelers who work on the problem and try to come up with the best estimates they can. We run into these sorts of problems in all different contexts. The census, for instance, works, devotes tremendous resources to trying to model subpopulations that they can't perfectly count to try and approximate the true number because they can't actually reach everybody. It's a different type of problem, but it's another one where you have to go to modeling estimates to try and approximate the true number. I think that problem is arguably even worse in the area of public health. So the short answer is they do the best they can. It's never going to be perfect.
Right. Absolutely. Sorry. All that being said, why is this of concern? Looking at the abstract in the report, it looked like maybe 14% of older Americans may not be vaccinated. I mean, that's not a massive number, but it's certainly, bigger than the 1% that the numbers indicated. So why is this of concern? Why is this important for us to know?
So I think you just sort of hit it on the head. When you look at the CDC estimates, you would think from those numbers that basically we can check that box. Seniors are vaccinated and boosted and everything's fine there, and we can move on to other subpopulations. But when we parse out those data, in a way that we think is a little bit more reliable, asking people directly whether they've been boosted, whether they've been vaccinated, whether they've had 1 or 2 doses, et cetera, we find that there is a not trivial group of elderly Americans, folks over age 65, who are not yet vaccinated. So these are folks that we could still target, and these are the most vulnerable folks. So they're the most likely to have, serious outcomes if they contract COVID. So this is where the vaccination is likely to make the most difference. In addition, we asked people in open-ended questions why they weren't vaccinated if they weren't. And a majority of them are not refusing vaccinations for political or ideological reasons. In other words, they're not sort of hell-bent on not getting vaccinated. Rather, they have pretty reasonable concerns, which I'm sure are familiar. It's a very new vaccine. We hear lots of stories about serious side effects. These are things that information campaigns, informing people, communicating with them really could still make a difference. So this is a population where there are persuadable folks that we could reach. And with a particularly disproportionately large effect if we are able to reach them. So I think it's important to make that effort, for the government to be making that effort.
Understood. Professor, final question to you. So, right now we're in 2022. It's been over 2 years since the pandemic hit the United States. Looking at the numbers in terms of infection rates right now, vaccination rates, and these new variants that are out, what's the latest? I mean, COVID is not in the news the way it was, every day for so long. So a lot of Americans may not even know whether or not they should be wearing a mask in their area. Just can you give us a snapshot of where things are in general in the country right now in terms of COVID?
Sure. I mean, it's a mixed story. We've had a significant surge in the Northeast that now seems to be receding, but at the same time, we're seeing sort of select places, a select number of places where we're starting to see significant surges. California and Florida are two that I've looked at recently, for instance. So this follows a pattern that we've seen throughout the pandemic, which is, the regions are moving asynchronously. So where one region has a fairly substantial surge, maybe due to weather patterns, for instance, in cold weather in New England, perhaps, then when it starts to recede there, as the weather's heating up in the South and Southwest and people start going indoors to escape the heat, then they start to experience a surge. The good news is we have much larger populations of people with at least some immunity, either from vaccination and boosting or from having had COVID once, and in some cases more than once. So it does seem like the serious outcomes are less frequent. Certainly fatalities are a fraction of what they were in earlier waves. I think, there's a lot of uncertainty going forward. One thing about this virus is it mutates rapidly. And because it seems to mutate rapidly, there's almost constantly new variants emerging. And every time there's a new variant, there's uncertainty. The general trend with viruses is they tend to become less severe as they become more contagious. And that seems to have been the pattern until now. And I think we could take that as additional good news. But there's just going to be uncertainty for the foreseeable future. We're likely to continue to see sort of, kind of whack-a-mole, the surges come up over there, then they go down, and then in some other area, they start to go up. We don't see this sort of uniform national behavior that we've seen, at least at several points early in the pandemic. Much more likely to be, region-specific and season-specific.
Very well. I don't know if that's comforting or reassuring, but whatever it is, it's good to know, just to know the facts. And we appreciate you for your expertise and sharing the results of this survey. So now we and the public and public health officials have a better understanding of what they're actually dealing with, especially in terms of older Americans. So Professor, thank you so much for your work, and thank you for joining us today. We appreciate it. And we
thank you for having me.
Islamophobia machine is right here in the United States. But around the world, it is doing a lot of damage, especially in India nowadays. But there is someone here in the United States who is concerned about that, and students have come up with tools and resources how to deal with Islamophobia. Dr. Shehnaz Haqqani is going to be my guest. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
Welcome to Muslim Network TV.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
So you have been teaching at this university, and your students have come up with this idea of how to handle with that. What type of students you have? Where do you get them?
That's a great question. The Islamophobia course that I teach, which was the second time I taught this past spring, in 2022, they're third, fourth year students. I might get a couple of first or second year students, but they vary a lot. And usually by the third and fourth year, they have an opportunity to take any class that might either be relevant to their majors. If they're majoring, for example, in policy or history, etc., they might take a course like this, or they might just generally be interested in anti-racism or just racism and wanting to better understand the world and make it better. So mostly for third-year students who are just invested in a better world.
Well, students interested, willing to invest in a better world is an amazing gift. Tell us, what have they come up with? What resources and tools have they developed?
Yes, so the way that I taught this course this semester was as a community-based learning or service learning course. Mercer has a great service learning program, and I worked with a community-based learning program also with a workshop that was hosted by or done through Johns Hopkins, led by Humaira Ziad and Hussein Rashid. And the idea was to teach a course, an Islam-focused course, in a way that would train the students about connecting with the Muslim community. And one of the ideas I gave them for a project was because they have to have a project. Community service learning course comes with a service project. They produce something that would be useful to the community, in this case, the Muslim community in Macon, in Macon, Georgia. And the idea would be to think about how this resource or this toolkit or this product would be used for future students or future community members, or how this could better help people understand Islamophobia or dismantle Islamophobia. So the students were asked to think about a question or a gap that would help them, that they wish a resource that they wish they had when they were, let's say, outside of this class. And so the first or second day of classes, we talked about who is your audience? Imagine an audience. Think about your family members who are Islamophobic or who are racist, or relatives, the notorious racist uncle who says really terrible things about Muslims or about Black people and so on at a Thanksgiving dinner. And one student was interested, for example, in the ways that Islam was taught to her in high school or middle school. And she wanted to fix that problem or contribute to fixing that problem by thinking about what resources high school teachers, middle school teachers could use to better understand Islam for themselves in order to be able to teach it in a more appropriate way. Someone else was interested in the question of the hijab. Why are Americans or Islamophobic Americans so concerned with the covering of Muslim women? So they were just asked to think about an audience and then try to pitch to them this project and say, here's a resource that will better help you understand why you have problematic attitudes towards the Muslims and how you can improve them.
I seen a news report that one of your students actually has developed outline of a curriculum. How is she, a student in undergrad program, is able to think so deeply and come up with the outline of a curriculum?
I get really lucky. I get really lucky with my other Islamophobia course also that I taught. The students are just, like I said, deeply invested in a better world. And in this case, she would often talk about, not just her, but the other students also would often talk about the problematic things that they learned in their schools, or, things that they learned at churches about Islam. And so this one student said she wants to think about she wants to know what resources are out there, better, history books, better Islam books, better books on Muslims around the world that would provide a more accurate or as close to an accurate portrayal of Islam and Muslims worldwide. And so she wanted to, create something like a curriculum. I wouldn't call it exactly a curriculum. It's a really beautiful sort of graphic that provides some resources, including key terms. What is Orientalism? What is Islamophobia? What are subconscious biases? Why should somebody know why subconscious biases matter when they're teaching about Islam? And so she just, I often get lucky when I teach courses, upper level courses at Mercer, where the students are just very knowledgeable, very aware, and again, genuinely invested in a better world. And she was one of them.
Professor Haqqani, as a time when, critical race theory is, people are wrestling on the race theory, something like that, does it have a room in American classroom nowadays?
It does. So the way that I think of this, especially this one student's project on, preparing or equipping K through 12 teachers with how to better teach Islam, the way that I think of that one is, one, there are many, many different ways to teach about Islamophobia that are effective, that are productive, and that aren't threatening to the empire, to these racist institutions. But her curriculum in particular, the resources that she was providing these teachers, the idea was, hey, teachers, at the very least on your own, know that these books exist, these resources exist. She gives links to some online links that teachers can access to just better them individually prepare themselves for how to teach about Islam in a more appropriate way, in a less Islamophobic, less exclusionary way. And then those teachers don't have to teach those same texts in their classes, but at least they would be aware, and they would be aware of their subconscious biases, for example. How much time are they giving to Islam when they're talking about world religions? How much time are they giving to the Middle East when they're talking about the world? In what ways are they talking about the Middle East or South Asia or Muslim majority countries? And so at the very least, these teachers would have some knowledge of Islam and the ways that they think and teach about it, so that it is a bit more appropriate. And they don't have to assign those readings in their classes. And so that's how I think of it. The teachers are individually prepared to teach about Islam.
So Mercer University, what has been their response to this type of work which you're doing? It goes beyond teaching a book and getting over with that.
Oh my God, Mercer has been incredibly supportive. I like to think of it as me just, again, being lucky with this. But Mercer, I'm in the religion department. I'm an Islam specialist in the religion department at Mercer. And They have been incredibly supportive, both as my department, my chair, the service learning program. They gave me some funds to help students print these curricula or these, these brochures or these graphics. They want to see Mercer doing well. They want to see Mercer students doing well, and they want to see a better world. And so they gave me the resources that I needed, the financial and other support that I needed. I constantly met with the director of the program to say, I have a lot of questions. I've never done a service learning course. How do I do this? And they were all just very patient with me. And Mercer is a great institution with a powerful vision and willing to train students to, be better citizens of the world.
Well, Dr. Haqqani, one thing for my personal education, what is this service learning class? It looks like to me, field trip.
Did you say a field trip? No. So a service learning programs will often require students to have a community project, a service project. A lot of people misunderstand a service learning course to simply be, hey, go help, clean up the neighborhood or something. But one of the workshop that I mentioned that I was doing with Johns Hopkins through Humaira Ziad and Hussein Rashid, we got trained. I was in this workshop, again, community-based learning focused workshop, teaching us how to help students develop projects that are long-lasting and that are impactful, and that are also mutually beneficial. So having students, the Mercer program does the same thing. It wants the instructor who is teaching this course to find community partners. My colleagues, I was looking at colleagues' syllabi for the courses, the community-based learning courses that they've taught, and they were really beautiful, brilliant stuff. They find community organizations and just local individuals and organizations that will work with their students, but in a way where the students' needs are met, the instructors' courses needs are met, but also the communities or the organizations' needs are met. And so it's a very mutually beneficial course. In this case, the idea was to have my students work with the Muslims of Macon, Georgia. So the local mosque there was incredibly open and incredibly supportive. The imam was very welcoming, encouraged me to have my students come in on Fridays or Sundays when it's very busy. And so the students got to build a community or build networks with the mosque. They had really great experiences, and they would often rave about in their, they had to have like a weekly report, and they would rave about their experiences and talk about how one student often said that he had learned so much about the Muslims and Islam just by meeting with Muslims and going to the mosque and having lunches or dinners with them. I got lucky that it was Ramadan this spring, and so the students got to have iftar a lot with the folks at the mosque. And so the idea was for the students to get to develop skills such as how to have open conversations, how to ask Muslims, how to introduce themselves to Muslims and tell them, I'm working on this project, I'm working in this class. How can I ask you questions that I know you might currently find inappropriate, but I'm just learning, help me out here. And so they worked with the Muslim community in Macon, and they also, we worked with CARE Georgia, also incredibly supportive and incredibly willing to help us with anything. And so they gave my students 2 sessions of teaching workshops on Islamophobia and anti-Islamophobia, teaching them how to develop projects that might be helpful and impactful, and then giving them feedback. And so CARE was very, very supportive also.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Haqqani, for your time and for your work, and for the blessing that you have so many good students.
Yes. I think
some credit does go to professor also, right?
I'm sorry?
Some credit goes to teacher as well.
Some credit goes to the teacher, yes.
Thank you so much for your time. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam.
That's all from our Washington studios tonight. Thank you for tuning in. You can find previous episodes and more on our YouTube or Facebook. For more content, keep watching Muslim Network TV or visit muslimnetwork.tv. Assalamu alaikum, good night, and Eid Mubarak.